Axie Infinity is moving forward with another update for Origin. This time we are seeing quite a lot of changes, so they are trying to make the game more balanced, more fun and more competitive. Let's see if this update will bring us a step closer to that goal. So we do have a balancing update and UI improvement. We will have a look at those in just a second. In arena mode, players that go first will once again have 3 energy, but are now unable to use attack cards on the first turn. This is probably the stupidest change that I have seen. I mean, why would you limit the first turn? What is this change? How is this supposed to be fair? So going second is always better, right? Because let's say you are running a team like Triple Beast or the Triple Aqua, you don't really have many cards that are running defensive cards or skills. You kind of all have attack cards, and looking at the amount of attack cards in the game, it just doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? Leave them with 2 energy and give them attack cards, or a different way to balance this. I really don't like this change. I think it's not good. It limits a lot of strategies out there, and you just have a big disadvantage if you are going first. Unless I'm looking at this wrong, I don't think I am. I think a lot of cards, a lot of teams don't really have defensive cards unless you specifically have to build for a defensive team or use charms that have retain or innate on defensive cards, which again limits your strategy options because you have to use those if you want to stay competitive. They added a QR login for Axie Origin. When challenging another player, the player who sends the challenge will go first. Interesting. I mean, this is better. It might not seem like a big change, but for competitive tournaments, this will make it much easier to do a best of 3 series or a best of 5 where you go first and then your opponent goes first and you balance it that way. Spectating a game will now have a 4-turn delay. That's good for, again, Axie esports and the competitive scene, because you do need that delay to have a fair environment when casting tournaments. Improvement and bug fixes, let's look at those before we jump into the balance update. Charms no longer work if equipped with no compatible cards. That's interesting. I'm not sure which cards they are mentioning here. Endless Anger Rune no longer grants rage to dead Axies. Not sure why it would give rage to dead Axies. If they're dead, it doesn't really matter. Or unless it was stacking up and sometime in the later stages you would get a Fury mode from a dead Axie. Maybe that was a bug. Draw cards effect will now draw the card before dealing damage, removing the infinite card draw exploit. It looks like that took them quite a while to fix. Using a 0 energy draw card will now correctly end turn when the turn timer is up. Submit button will disable. Okay, so it looks like those are quite small changes, quite small bug fixes. This one is a big one. Hex and Fear on multi-target attacks will only shuffle 1 confused card. So if you were running, let's say, a purge attacks 4 times, you would shuffle 4 confused cards into your pile, which was tragic if you are facing a gloomy dice. They have fixed various Clover summer bugs. Hermit no longer triggers on poison. Oranda no longer removes power effects, so Oranda no longer a counter to the back lane Sakura, which is quite a strong Axie and the back lane currently. Summons will now currently disappear after death. Cards affected by Mavis will now display the correct energy cost. This one is a big one, at least visually, because the energy cost goes down at various points. Sometimes it's the start of the turn, sometimes when you use it, it goes down and it doesn't take your energy. It's a weird one, so hopefully they have fixed that. Regenerator will now remove the debuff icons that they cleansed it. Okay, I thought Regenerator was bugged as well. I like running that rune, so I thought it's not working correctly, but it looks like it was a visual bug. Imp will now correctly cost 0 energy. All cleanse effects should work more reliably now. The Gloomy Dice will now correctly activate on turn 1 when equipped by the player who goes second, and a couple of other small changes as well. So let's jump into the balancing update and let's see what the team has prepared for us. Again, we do have a spreadsheet with runes, charms and cards themselves. So first of all, we do have the Nemo, old Nemo, 35 HP. If you are full HP, it does banish. Now it looks like it does buff. It heals for 40, but you no longer can target any ally. They do have reasoning for changes here. If anything is interesting, then we will look at those. Koi, a significant nerf to Koi, 15 damage. Koi actually counts all Axies, all 3 Axies instead of just the 2 allies. So by itself, Koi actually deals 125 damage. This number needs to be reduced by 15 damage, so it negates one of those Axies, which now works correctly. Wall Gecko, this Axie loses 50 HP and takes 30% less damage for 4 turns. This Axie loses 50 HP and takes 30% less damage for 4 turns. Stack by turn. What does that mean? This is actually a bug fix, but we also updated the description to make it clearer. I'm not sure that makes it clear. If I couldn't understand it at first. Topaz, a big nerf to Topaz. You need to banish extra 2 cards before you go into the same effect that it had. Trying to lessen the impact of Topaz in early game. Yeah, because you can start with a couple of innates on banished cards and you can have a Topaz that's hitting for like 70 or 80 round 2, which is a little bit too much. Tiny Turtle now can target any enemy and it applies stun if the shield is broken. It was nerfed a little bit too hard. I think it was. It's still quite difficult to pull off Tiny Turtle to deal exactly enough damage to break the shield, but it is what it is. For a stun, you need to be doing that. Tiny Fan, old stats, you would get 1 card, 2 damage boost, and it would banish. Now you gain 4 damage boost to self. And it heals for 35, but it also banishes, so you no longer draw a card. Aquas had too much card draw. That is true, because if you are running a Tiny Fan, you are running a Goldfish and a Telescope, you can banish so many cards. If you're running a Nemo as well, you can banish and you can draw a lot of cards. So unnecessary nerf. Blue Moon, draw a card. If initial, hero. If initial, beetroot. If initial, a lot of if initial. The deck cycling speed is a little bit too fast in some cases, so they are trying to limit that by adding initial. Now, changes make sense. Hair getting a buff, 70 damage. Now you draw 1 card if this is the only attack card in your hand. Trying to differentiate the cards from the above ones. Okay, experiment. I think it's just worth playing a hair for the 70 damage. Makes sense. Larva, scry 1 card. Just added a banish, so it's not that strong. GODA now only dealing 40 damage. I've seen quite a lot of triple GODA teams. I think it makes sense when your opponent draws a void. Now only dealing 40 damage. Big nerf, definitely a big nerf. Potato Leaf, you gain stealth for 2 rounds if there is at least 1 non-stealth Axie alive. So quite a lot of changes to cards, definitely. We can see that they are clearly attacking Aquas, Koi, Nemo, and all of the draw cards have been affected. When it comes to runes, only 1 is being changed. Endless Anger. Rage now grants 3 bonus damage. Each Rage grants 1 bonus damage. Update the description to match the original intention for this rune. Okay, just updating the... I guess it still works the same. Now, charms. We see quite a lot of changes to charms, especially those that have the banish or ethereal. The old one, you add banish and card based stats plus 20%. Now they have removed all of those card boosting stats, and I think that makes sense, because if you are running a banish or an ethereal in your team, you want to get rid of these cards and you want to play them as quick as you can, and getting those extra 10 or 20% just makes it so much better to use that charm, and you still get the benefits of banishing your cards. Let's say you're cycling through your Nutcracks or your Little Owls, and then you get those extra benefits. So removing that 20 and 10%, I think it makes sense, because people using those charms naturally want to get rid of them, and they get extra benefits from getting rid. So there's no need to giving them extra bonuses. Are often positive effects, thus they don't need to increase a card's value further. Makes sense. It makes sense. Now, Gecko Mask, Flamingo Hammer, all of these are now for 4 turns, because they probably just were a little bit too weak. So updated the description to match the in-game behavior. Okay, so it was already for 4 turns, they just updated the description. That makes sense. Let's look at the UI changes as well. In the UI changes, your turn will automatically end when no playable cards. You haven't played the card for 15 seconds. Makes sense. So you can't really kill time. I thought they added that already. Runes and charms from Axies can be equipped directly to any other Axies. I thought they already did a lot of those. Okay, this one is new. You can take charms. You can take away runes and charms from other Axies, and equipped runes are now shown on top of the Axie. Now this is a good one, it makes it much easier to search for the runes and charms. Obviously that doesn't make a difference right now because we have enough runes and charms, but in the official launch that will make it much easier to find those runes and charms. And that's gonna be it for this video. Let me guys know, what do you think about all of these changes and whether the runes and charms are getting updated in the right direction. I think the change that they made to not being able to attack in round 1 is a big one, a one that we definitely didn't need, but that's just my opinion. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel for daily playthrough and content, and I will see you in the next one.